In this video, I want to do something ordinary and extraordinary, and that's answer a question several of you have asked, which is, what is Vlad's politics? And it's very important that I don't quite know what my politics is, in a sense. And that's not an expression of lack of certainty or lack of knowledge. It's an expression of certainty and knowledge. But at the same time, a recognition of difficulty, a recognition of openness, and the recognition of the messiness and contingency of political life. You know, in philosophy, a very fruitful conversation is often when two marvelous philosophers know they disagree, but they don't know exactly where they disagree. And that's undiscoverable. That precise point of departure is undiscoverable, because if you can easily discover, I disagree with Richard Dawkins, who's not a deep thinker, so it's easy to point out exactly the 17 ways one disagrees with him. I disagree with Richard Dawkins here, and here. Well, that's not a fruitful disagreement. A fruitful disagreement is an unlocatable disagreement. It's a disagreement that can't quite be placed. Two philosophers know they disagree, but they don't know exactly where and how. And that's always an exploration that leads to great mutual illumination. So contrast that with a Silicon Valley CEO, coming onto a social media app and declaring that they're a libertarian. So very tentatively, how would I begin to convey to you what my politics is? Well, I think I am a kind of liberal with a small l that has nothing to do with the American sense of the word and reveals virtually nothing substantial ideologically. Well, except at a very general level. And I think I am a liberal who is anti-universalist. I'm a liberal who is anti-theoretical. And I am, and the tag for this could just change day by day, a kind of Telic liberal. So what the hell does all of that stuff mean? Well, I'm a universalist, anti-universalist liberal, in the sense that I don't think that liberal values and institutions have normative grip on the distant past or on the distant future. In other words, there is plenty we can say psychologically and even ethically about Ivan the Terrible. We can talk about his brutality. But we can't really say that he wasn't liberal, that he wasn't democratic enough. It's not illegal to say that, but it really isn't possible, in my view, to say that with purchase, with normative purchase. The second thing that I think characterizes my position is that I'm an anti-theoretical liberal. That's to say, I don't think philosophy or theory could prescribe how much liberal values and liberal institutions are part of what makes a society legitimate in the modern world. I think then the third element of my liberal position is the liberal bit itself, which just means that liberal values and liberal institutions have some non-trivial place in our picture of what is a minimally legitimate society in the modern world. What does this mean specifically? Specifically, it means that some features of participatory democracy, that's all, some features of participatory democracy have to be part of a political order for it to be minimally legitimate. And then I'm a kind of a Telic liberal, which is to say that there is no way in advance to tell how much liberal institutions, which is to say checks and balances, change of governance, independent court system, it's not clear in advance how far liberal institutions and liberal values are part of what's a legitimate society. And the Telic bit is really to say, well, our story isn't to say that's how much these institutions and values normatively apply, and then let's go ahead and advocate for that to happen. Our story is rather to say, well, we don't know, but we're exploring where we are going as we go along, and we're exploring as we go along how close to it we can get, while constantly questioning, changing, relocating our target. So it's a telic, or if you like, a kind of purposive vision that isn't compatible with any statement in advance of exactly how many democratic practices you need to be a legitimate society. And it's very important that when I use the word telic, I mean something very different to the word teleological. I'm very much an anti-teleological liberal. That's, if you like, a consequence of my telic position, that it's telic but anti-teleological. That's to say, I'm opposed to any view of liberal values as being somehow the socio-political default on which human societies would converge if only they were allowed to develop, if you like, freely enough. I don't believe in any such narrative of historical progress in practice or in principle. Now, where does this come from? I would say it's interesting. I mean, my historical influences, don't mistake this for my philosophical influences. These are just my influences as far as politics goes. Probably are Thucydides, Machiavelli, Hobbes, Montaigne, Montesquieu, Constant, maybe Nietzsche. Nietzsche greatly outside of politics, but politically a little bit to some extent. And what are my contemporary influences? I would say, if we look at the 20th century, Collingwood, Isaiah Berlin, Bernard Williams, Avishai Margalit, Stuart Hampshire, Raymond Geuss, Judith Shklar, and these are all people who focus not only on getting the best, but on avoiding the worst in politics. And they are all people who focus on the political in politics. Their politics is terribly political. Their politics starts with politics. And their philosophy of politics really starts with the idea that what has significance in philosophical terms is just what has significance in political terms. But I mean, come on, Vlad, what about something more basic like how do you vote? I think the key principle along which I vote is that I vote against political candidates who are intentionally or unintentionally set on breaking the game of democratic process and ritual, breaking the game of functioning counter-majoritarian institutions, breaking the game of checks and balances. Anybody who is intentionally or unintentionally out to break the game, whether they're left, right, or centrist, I'm going to vehemently vote against them. And as far as issues that I vote on, the single most important one is the climate crisis. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of my politics, but it also gives you a sense of what that kind of question, I believe, ought to mean if one takes it seriously enough. I hope this was of some value. Lots of love.